Hey guys, I hope you're doing really well. I'm just going to share with you guys a super simple sauerkraut recipe. We've been making a lot of sauerkraut recently because it's really good for gut health and kind of probiotics and things like that, especially when you're vegan. It's a really nice way of supporting your gut and getting those healthy gut bacteria moving. So it's really simple and it's very expensive to purchase. Here in Australia anyway, it's usually somewhere between $15 to $20 for a jar of sauerkraut, like a big jar of sauerkraut. And it's super easy to make, so I'm going to show you how. So I've just gone to our veggie garden and picked actually two organic cabbages. You can use red cabbage, it creates a really nice pink sauerkraut. We've just got these white cabbages at the moment. It's I think it's pretty important that you can see our huge glut of beetroots here that have come from the garden as well. It's really important that you get an organic cabbage if you possibly can. They're not that much more expensive. You can also grow your own. There's just a lot more good stuff on organic cabbage. Obviously no pesticides and things like that, so go organic if you can. And what I've done is I've separated the kind of white, soft bits of the cabbage leaves and have separated the more leathery pieces as well. So we're going to be using these white sections, or these whiter sections. So you're going to want to make sure that you've washed and picked through your cabbage, especially if you're using organic. You might find some little sluggies and things in there, so make sure that you kind of pick through the leaves, separate them out a little bit, and just make sure you've got no bugs in there. So I've done that, and what I'm doing is just making sure that I am cutting up the cabbage really nice and small. I'm doing that by wrapping the leaves around each other and just kind of really slowly and mindfully cutting the cabbage into small kind of slices. I find that I prefer the texture of this a lot more than the chunkier sauerkraut, but you'll find your own way and how you prefer it. So yeah, I find that just kind of piling the leaves up on top of each other, kind of holding them down and then cutting with a nice sharp knife is a really good way of getting a really thin consistency for my kraut. I ended up moving into a bigger bowl just so there's some space for me to move around. So what we're going to do next is put about 2 tablespoons of sea salt or Himalayan salt like I've got here, and also about a tablespoon of, I'm going to use fennel. You can also use caraway seeds or kind of really whatever you fancy. I've used black mustard seed before as well, which is really nice, but I think I'm just going to go with fennel for today. And so what I'm going to do is within layers, I'm kind of going to break up and then put some salt inside, massage, and then pop the fennel seeds inside as well. And the idea is we're going to try and get a lot of water and liquid out of this cabbage just naturally, so that it will fill up the jars and help with the fermenting process. Okay, so I've just lifted up the cabbage and put salt and fennel seeds throughout, and I'm now just going to spend the next 5 to 10 minutes just gently massaging this cabbage, breaking it up a little bit into smaller pieces, and really kind of working until I get a fair chunk of moisture out of the cabbage. I can feel it already in my hand. You can see my hand's wet, so you just want to get your hands in there and start playing with the cabbage a little bit and making sure that there's quite a lot of moisture in there. So again, that's around about 2 tablespoons of salt for about this amount of cabbage. You can go a little bit more, a little bit less, depending. The salt really helps get the liquid out of the cabbage. And then I've done about a tablespoon of fennel seeds, which smell really nice, so I think they'll work really well. Alright, so I've been massaging this for probably about 10 minutes, I reckon, and you can see that the colour's really changed. It's got more of a kind of olivey green, and there's a lot of liquid in there. So just keep on massaging until you get a nice chunk of liquid, because you want that liquid to kind of sit over the top of the kraut that you're working on, just to keep the oxygen levels down in there. I'm going to try and do this one-handed, but what we're going to do is get our nice clean jar. I've just made sure this is super clean and have put boiling water in there and let that sit for a little while. And we're going to fill up the jar and compact the kraut down really far. I'll show you what that looks like in a minute, because I am making a mess. Okay, so I've got all of my kraut into the jar, and as you can see I've been compacting it down really hard, and you can see that there's a lot of liquid in there that's just come out of these cabbage leaves. That's perfect really. What you want is to have the liquid pretty much covering the whole of the kraut. This really helps with the process and making sure that not too much bad bacteria gets in there. The next thing that we're going to do is going to get one of our leathery leaves. I've given this one a good wash, and we're going to shove that into the top of the kraut, just making sure to cover the whole area. It will help just make sure there's no mold going into the kraut itself, just like that. And then we're just going to put the jar lid on and keep this out of the fridge. Usually takes about a week to 2 weeks here. In the winter time, we're going into spring now, so it might be closer to a week. But this is pretty much just ready to have its lid on it and sit out fermenting. And what you can do is give it a week or two and then just have a little taste and see what you think. So lift up this leaf and give it a try and see whether or not you like the flavour or not. So the longer that you allow it to ferment, the stronger the kind of almost vinegary flavour that it will have. And then once you're kind of happy with it, you can start eating it, and then just decant it into other jars or keep it in this jar and pop it in the fridge, and that will stop the fermenting process. And that's how you make kraut.